Well, hey there, idiots. Welcome back to Observe. In today's video, I'm going to be analyzing the nonverbal communication of Jeff Wittek, who is associated with David Dobrik and the scandal that has gone down involving Dom. I know that's a lot of people that I just listed off here, so for those of you who don't know the situation, Dom did some very, very terrible things. He's an idiot, and I don't condone him in any form or fashion. On a related note, David Dobrik, who is in charge of the vlog squad more or less, knew about Dom's actions a while ago, chose not to act on them, and recently released an apology video. Jeff Wittek was also unfortunately involved in the internet atrocity known as the vlog squad, and is now coming out with his own apologies. While Jeff is not directly involved with the actions of Dom and David, he does feel semi-responsible and was mentioned in an article that attributed his name to the entire incident. So he has come out with not one, but two apologies, and I'm going to be analyzing the nonverbal communication of the second apology. Now, my knowledge of the vlog squad and these people involved is minimal. I did that intentionally to be able to maintain an unbiased and untainted perspective of the incident. But as you know, I have already done 2 videos on David's previous apologies, and I have been highly requested to look at Jeff's. So I went through and I tried to find his first apology. Needless to say, he deleted it, so I was able to find it from another person. That being said, it was a very low quality video, so I couldn't see too much non-verbally. While I was watching it, however, I did note that it did seem quite sincere. While I didn't agree with his verbiage during the apology, his body language seemed to be synchronized throughout, from what I could tell from the very blurry image. Then I was able to go and watch his second apology, which is dramatically shorter, and he addresses some of the faults in his previous one. Along with that, I was able to watch the Frenemies episode in which they speak with Jeff. Now, for those of you who are new to the field, nonverbal communication is at best 70 to 80% accurate, with plenty of room for misinterpretation. All of this being said, let's dive into the actual analysis.
Alright, so I deleted my last video titled My Truth because turns out I had some things wrong from my memory, and there was a lot of things I said wrong and did wrong in that.
Okay, so please note that he is wearing white. I'm not going to attribute too much to this because it seems to be just an average everyday sort of outfit. It's not uncommon to see somebody wearing a t-shirt. He's also wearing a cap, no big deal. But the glasses are partially obscuring his eyes, which is going to make the read a little bit more difficult if I'm going to be relying on any of the tells centered around the muscles, especially the finer muscles around the eyes. That being said, he's also very small in the frame, he's not very dynamic, and this is all to present an idea of vulnerability to the camera. This is common in an apology. Let's continue watching.
Video because I acted out of emotion and impulse and frustration that my name was even mentioned in it. And I said I didn't want to discredit the victim, but by discrediting the reporter and my small, minuscule part in the story.
Okay, so I will note he is looking down commonly. This is very common in shame. It's hard to hold another person's gaze while you're feeling shame, and in the same light, it's also hard to hold gaze with a camera while feeling shame. One of my thoughts was perhaps he's reading something down below, but if you watch his eyes carefully, they are not moving left to right, which is an indicator that he is in fact not reading anything. Perhaps he has notes, it's hard to say, but so far all that I am seeing is shame across his face. This is important during an apology, and it is an indicator of authenticity. Let's continue.
I did just that. I discredited the entire story that this girl worked up the courage to tell, and
he's using a pointer finger gesture down there. You can see it just barely at the bottom of the frame. This is an aggressive gesture, and what he's speaking about now is aggression towards himself for discrediting the victim's statement, even unintentionally. He should have aggression towards himself. This is a synchronized point in his body language. It is good to see.
I feel horrible about it, and I just want to apologize. I truly believe Hannah's story. I respect her for...
Couldn't see anything that would indicate deception during this point. He does have a long pause before that, and you can hear a little bit of tenseness in his voice. This is commandeering nerves and emotion. It's either one of those two or it could be both. Regardless, it doesn't have any indicators of deceit.
Coming forward and telling it takes a lot. And to have somebody like me come on and just focus on myself and my part of the story.
You can see a lot of disgust coming in around the corners of his nose and barely around his eyes. Like I said, it's hard to see his eyes due to his glasses, but you can see that a little bit of squinting is coming in there. That is common in negative emotion as well, and you can see it around the action in the corners of his nose. These are both indicators of disgust. He is having and showing genuine, authentic indicators of disgust across his face.
And saying that it was a lie just because I was selfish and I didn't want to be mentioned in this act at all. Imagine if something like being assaulted and then nothing happens to that person.
Now, I will go ahead and mention from here on out that there may or may not be any trigger warnings needed. I don't remember the exact wording of this apology. In the first apology, there was certainly a lot of trigger warnings needed, but just be prepared. If this is something that could be triggering for you, this might not be the video for you. Now, speaking on his nonverbal communication, you could see that there's a little bit of action in his shoulder. It's not a full half shrug as you might expect to see in something that would be insecure or insincerity. It does seem to be just an average movement of his shoulders. Let's continue.
But they keep growing and keep getting more successful and keep making the same jokes. I had to take some time to think about all this. In David's video, he said that he got the text 3 months after the incident happened. I wasn't filled in on this for whatever reasons. I don't know if it was because he thought I would attack Dom.
This is true from what I can tell. He's showing authentic and synchronized body language. This is an indicator for a lack of deceit, or another way to put that is authenticity. He doesn't seem to be lying during this point. I do believe him when he says that he did not receive any information about this from David at the point that David learned it.
Or maybe he didn't want to tell anyone to protect his squeaky clean brand at the time. I don't know. There's no excuse for it. It's just not something you hide, and I wasn't told, and I was in the video, and I was acting in bits, and I stand by that.
You could see him say, I don't know, and then if you watch his shoulder again here, it does have more action, so that is an indicator of insecurity. That is synchronized with the words that he's saying. This is an indicator commonly of authenticity, not necessarily all the time, but most of the time. Also, I would like to be able to note, so far his wording, the verbiage that he is using is good. He is not offering himself any excuses during this apology. He's not offering any leeway for the people that were involved and did the actual crime itself. That is important to note. He's not trying to blame shift on any level. If you see a person apologize and try to blame shift, be it to the circumstances, be it to anything else, that immediately makes their apology more or less meaningless. Let's continue.
I was looking in a room and I didn't witness anything, but something horrible did happen and people knew about it and they didn't tell me. And I didn't find out until the reporter reached out with this article.
I will make a note that it's interesting that he does a mouth-touching gesture here. This can be self-soothing or it can be a blocking. Either one would be an indicator of distress and anxiety centered around this specific subject. I would have to ask, is this born out of anxiety centered around the actual incident itself, or is it centered around his desire to keep himself from showing that he's lying? We don't know the answer to that. So far, judging by the rest of his video, he's been very authentic and synchronized, so it would be safer to assume that he's being so here as well, but it is something that I have made note of. Let's continue.
Because the state of mind I'm in, I acted off impulse and anger, that my name was even a part of it, and I apologize for that. I don't even have the courage to tell you guys what happened to me, so for me to discredit this girl for coming forward and talking about a traumatic thing that happened to her, and it had to be.
I know it's very hard to see, but his eyebrows are lightly furrowed and his eyes are squinting. This is an indicator of contempt or anger, somewhere in that wheelhouse of emotions. That is good to see in regards to what he's speaking of here. It's very, very difficult as a victim of this specific type of crime to be able to come forward and speak. And in this situation, in his first apology, he unintentionally undermined and disregarded her statement and made it sound as if it was not true, and he's apologizing for it. This is good. Long story short, this is good.
Extremely hard to come forward and say it, and I'm supposed to be this tough guy, and I can't even tell you what happened to me because I'm scared of the criticism I would get in return, I don't know if I would be able to deal with it. There's no contracts, there's no NDAs, there's no lawsuits. I just don't know if I could take it because I know how I got hurt was stupid and I'm embarrassed of it. And I've been acting irrational lately. I've undergone various surgeries on my eye and my...
You can still see a lot of action around his eyebrows and eyes, but he's also started to do an open-handed gesture here. This is a pleading gesture. This is saying that I'm open to whatever criticism you have towards me. This is open body language, and it is in a pleading, slightly upward turned of his hands. This is very, very common in situations like this. It does sound as if he's starting to make a few excuses. Let's hear how that plays out, and then we'll continue from there.
Head, and I had brain trauma. I've been on meds, and that's why I stutter, and that's why there'll probably be some cuts in this video. But fuck it, I'm going to try my best to be completely transparent.
You can hear his breathing has increased. That shallow, sharp breathing is an indicator of high anxiety, high stress. He is very turbulent centered around this. That is good to actually see. If it was very, very mellow and calm, then that would be more of a red flag. During this sort of situation, it makes more sense to see higher anxiety tells than to not. So during this time, this would be an indicator of authenticity for me.
And vulnerable and honest, and I'll probably fuck up on a couple of things, but when they ask me about...
You could see while he's processing what he's going to say, a very short micro expression of disgust slip in around the corner of his nose here. That is an unintentional seepage of actual emotion. Those short, very, very brief, often less than half a second flashes of emotion are most commonly genuine flashes of emotion. So during this time, he's showing actual disgust in regards to what he's talking about, and that makes sense in context of the video.
The article, I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to speak about my health and my vision, my fucking eye, I'm embarrassed of, and I see like a camera that's out of focus. I see complete blur out of my left eye, and it fucks up both my vision, so it's difficult for me to read, and I had the article read to me. And
this doesn't really have too much to do with what he's talking about. He's just explaining what his physical condition is. I'm sure it relates somehow to his apology. We have to continue watching, but I do want to note that it is a possible rabbit trail during an apology. And if you are being apologized to by somebody and they often rabbit trail during their apologies, that is an indicator that they have no interest in actually apologizing for it, and it can be an indicator of deceit or a lack of sincerity during that apology. So if you see that happen in your life, please make a note of it and make sure that you keep track of it. We have here, we'll see what happens from here.
That's still no excuse. I could have had it read to me 30 times and got every detail right, but I let my emotions get the best of me because of just me being selfish, and that's it. I tried to...
Disgust and contempt slipping in around the corners of his nose and mouth there. That is important to be able to note. This is directed towards himself and his own actions. This is an indicator of authenticity. That is important during this apology. It fits very, very well. So far, so good.
Blindly defend my friends when, truthfully, if something like this happens, you need to speak about it. You need to tell.
I'm curious as to why there was a cut there. He did mention that he has some difficulties with stumbling and stammering around on his words now due to some injuries. But right there he says truthfully, and then he has a pretty sizable lopsided shrug, and that can be an indicator of insincerity. However, it cuts right after that and he continues in, and his body is back to balanced again. It is something that I still have made note of and I'm keeping track of. Perhaps there is an area further on in the apology where this comes up and is important information. Regardless, we have it on our list of things to make note of, and we'll continue.
People, you need to take action because you can't cover shit like this up. This girl spoke up and told her story 3 months after it happened, and then everybody continued to keep making these jokes, and including myself. If I was the victim and I continued to watch these videos and see that I was still associating with Dom, and I made a joke with Dom that they separate the sexual... I literally said something based off a character that I thought that we all had an understanding of, that this was just a character, when he was a known abuser. And I had jokes come out after the situation and after people knew about that, and that doesn't sit right with me. So obviously there's a respect level here that's off, and I don't stand for that. I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to.
Okay, so he's saying I'm going to take a step back, and this is a very big defensive gesture, which lines up, once again, synchronized with his body language. Along with that on his face, he has some contempt and disgust mixed together. That is a common duo to be able to see in apologies, and that is in regards to the situation, the incident itself. This is good to see. For those of you who are curious about Jeff Wittek, this so far has been a very, very effective apology, both non-verbally and verbally.
Be accountable for myself, and that's it. Obviously, I need to take some time to heal and get my shit together. I'll do just that. I'll work on myself, and I'm going to try to grow from this experience. If this video gets torn apart and it's my last video and it gets 1 million dislikes and I get fucking ripped apart again, but it got at least one person to speak up and one person to get help or call, and
the emotions that are playing across his face right now commonly are shame and anger. This makes sense. He should be ashamed and he should be angry, and it's showing on his face, and it's not desynchronized. This is an indicator that it's authentic emotional leakage. You can fake leakage emotionally to where you can play off that you're being ashamed or you can play off that you're being angry, but it's hard to sustain. So the fact that he's been sustaining it for this time as well as he has pushes me to believe that he's being authentic. Once again, since this can only be 70 to 80% accurate at best at this state of the research, it can't be a guarantee, but I would be willing to stake my name on him being authentic right now.
just talk. Just get your story out there. If you know somebody that's assaulted someone, even if they're your best friend or your own fucking family member, you need to speak about it. This story's getting a lot of attention all over.
Very prevalent to me is the disgust expression on his face. It is continuous and it is synchronized. He is absolutely disgusted with this situation. That's important to note. That's important to see, and that's what we as viewers would hope to see. Let's continue watching the rest of the video, and then at the very, very end, I'll give you my thoughts and opinions separate from what we've observed.
YouTube and articles being published, and it's become a form of almost entertainment for people because of everyone that's involved, and it's not entertainment at all. This is a girl's life, and it's a thing she'll have to live with for the rest of her life. And if you're making money on it, I understand businesses need to keep their lights on, and people need to make money, and that's how the world works. But just try to help. Just do anything you can to help. I feel like you should. I suggest you should. I don't give a fuck what anybody else does. I can't be accountable for anybody but myself. I chose to donate to RAIN. RAIN is a charity for SA victims. It's a hotline as well. If you want to call them and talk, you can do it for free. And this is an ongoing situation that needs to be talked about. You cannot keep things like this a secret. And if you know anybody, just call and talk. If you've been assaulted, call and talk. I appreciate, everybody educating me more on this situation because, that's what life's about. That's all we can really do is learn and grow from these situations and try to help other people.
Okay, and that is the end of that video. That's the end of his second apology. So, speaking on it nonverbally throughout the entirety of the video, I saw mostly synchronized nonverbal communication. That's very, very good to note. There were some moments of possible insecurity. He did offer some verbal excuses here and there, but then immediately thereafter discredited his own excuses, once again pointing the responsibility back on himself. That means that he is processing and fighting against his own self-preservation during this, and that is something that is important in apologies. All that the science of nonverbal communication was able to show us today was that he was synchronized, and that is an indicator of authenticity. Now, my opinion outside of that is that he was an idiot to be involved with the Vlog Squad to begin with. I think it was a very toxic group, and it is based off of toxic values for shock factor, pranks, so on and so forth, that eventually end up in areas like this. Being a part of that is a terrible idea, and it's usually monetarily and fame driven. I think that it's coming to bite many people in the butt for their decision to be a part of the Vlog Squad, and I think that this might be a pretty hefty wake-up call for people like Jeff. And from what I can tell, he is going to be making strides forward from here effectively. Are we able to say that for sure? Absolutely not. We can only see what he does from this point on, but from his apology alone, I believe this one far, far more than I did David's. That's my opinion of Jeff Wittek's apology. Beyond this point, I will not be addressing this. Once again, Dom is garbage. I have no respect for him. He is a terrible human being and he belongs behind bars. This is never excusable. I have a lot of sympathy for people who have been through this. I know many myself, and it is a terrible thing to have to go through. I hope this video helped bring some light to the situation, perhaps lay some questions to rest, and hopefully we can all move forward from here and the people who have done the crimes have what is coming for them. That's all that I'm going to say on this. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.